From MTN News, this is Montana This Morning.
We're learning the officer seen in this video pulling a 17-year-old from a truck has a history of complaints against him.
If they don't address this and he gets put back as an officer, it's just a huge mistake.
Plus, more people are having strokes. We'll tell you how local hospitals are responding.
The longer that you wait with these symptoms, the more brain dies, the more deficits you have.
And details on a high-speed chase in Carbon County. Good morning and welcome to Montana This Morning on this Thursday, June 1st. I'm Diane Parker in for Augusta McDonald. We begin in Yellowstone National Park, where a tourist seen in a viral picture holding a bison calf agrees to plead guilty to intentionally disturbing wildlife charge. The Hawaii native must pay two separate $500 fines. One of those payments goes to the Yellowstone Forever Wildlife Protection Fund. The calf he was holding in this photo had to be euthanized. Witnesses told Q2 the man thought he was helping the animal. It got separated from the herd when it couldn't swim across the river. New this morning, the U.S. is one step closer to avoiding a potential historic default. The House passed a debt ceiling and budget cuts package late yesterday. The compromise deal comes with dissension from progressive Democrats and hard-right Republicans. The bill now heads to the Senate with passage expected by the end of the week. And while the bill passed with bipartisan support, the two representatives from Montana and one from Wyoming voted against raising the debt ceiling. Q2's David J. had a chance to talk with two of them about their concerns.
Congressman Matt Rosendale, the Eastern Montana representative, voted against the debt ceiling bill and was among 35 representatives who signed a letter to Speaker Kevin McCarthy.
What we saw was, again, a reversion back to the swamp tactics where the speaker went behind closed doors with the president and a handful of others, and they developed a piece of legislation that doesn't contain any of those provisions and brought it back. This is a whole new bill.
Rosendale says the debt ceiling does not eliminate 87,000 IRS agents, the Inflation Reduction Act green energy subsidies, and the $400 billion student loan redistribution program.
They have already made the deal with the Democrats to enrich themselves and to sell the American people down the river.
For those who are afraid that they're going to get audited because the president wants to have 87,000 new IRS agents, right now he has zero. We took every single dollar they were going to hire somebody this year away.
Wyoming Representative Harriet Hageman wanted to see more cuts.
And the other thing is that I don't like is that we are suspending the debt limit. So it is going to be whatever is spent between now and January 1st, 2025.
It's Democrats who have always been clear. We will not allow this country to suffer a devastating default.
Congressman Ryan Zinke, the Western Montana representative, sent a prepared statement.
We have to look out for number one, the Constitution, number two, Montana. And this bill does meet the bill on either point.
The people of Wyoming are very opposed to this particular bill.
This legislation absolutely is an example of all of the worst that Washington has to offer.
In Billings, David J., MTN News.
And it is time to get a quick check of the weather with Miller, and it is June.
Brand new month, and it's going to start off on a soggy note.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody's ever been down to the Gulf of Mexico. You don't have to go there because the Gulf of Mexico is coming to us. A lot of moisture coming up the next couple of days. Could see some flash flooding. Some areas could get 2 inches, if not more, rainfall by the time we get to tomorrow night, and we'll tell you why. We'll break it all down with the main forecast coming up. Warmer than average yesterday, a good 10 degrees above the norm with our high getting up to 82. A good 5 degrees above normal. Yesterday morning got down to about 54, so a mild start. Top gust yesterday of 37. Of course, that's when those storms come rocketing through. Did give us a little bit of rain here in Billings, gave us some hail as well, and we could see more opportunities of more widespread hail today as all that moisture starts to come in. Speaking of moisture, the totals for the month and the year pacing ahead, and I do believe those numbers are going to get bumped up the next couple of days with all that stuff coming up from the Gulf. 54 right now at the airport, winds out of the west at about 10 miles an hour. Temperatures across the area from west to east, we're in the 40s and 50s, even some 60s off to our east right now. Highs today from west to east, 60s, 70s, and still some 80s. And then, of course, we start to see the rain really move in this afternoon. It won't be a constant rain. It'll come and go, but there could be times, Diane, where it's just going to come down in buckets.
Oh, boy.
So we'll break it all down with that main forecast coming up in just a bit.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Miller.
You got it.
Well, it's video we showed you earlier this week. A Cody, Wyoming police officer physically pulling a 17-year-old boy out of a car. This morning, the teen's mother is calling for that officer to be fired, and she's not the only one complaining about his conduct. Q2's Andrea Lutz reports.
In the small community of Cody, Wyoming,
I've never been fearful of police.
some residents are charged.
I was very angry about it. I mean, it was unnecessary.
And a mother is calling for change.
I don't believe he should be an officer, period. I believe he should lose his job, and that's that. Find another line of work.
Teresa Piper is outraged.
Get out of the vehicle now.
Over this video showing her 17-year-old son yanked from the family vehicle after Cody officer Blake Stinson pulled him over for a traffic violation on the way to school one January morning.
And I was on the phone with my son when it was happening, so I could hear it, but when I finally saw it, just infuriated me.
Help me!
The body cam video has since blown up, so much so that dispatchers at the Cody Police Department say hundreds have called to offer comments about the case.
When you don't do what you're told, this is what happens.
The video placing a lot of attention on the force and landing Officer Blake Stinson on paid administrative leave.
I'm grateful he's off the streets, but it was a slap in the face.
But in this statement, Cody Police Chief Chuck Baker says he's committed to taking appropriate corrective actions should the findings of the investigation determine that the employee's conduct was inappropriate, excessive, or inconsistent with the responsibilities of the role.
We're trying to give them a chance to do what's right, and it doesn't seem like they're going to do that.
But Teresa's complaints aren't the only ones. In light of a formal complaint filed in her son's case, Scott Teschner says he was also a victim of Officer Stinson's aggressive behavior during a traffic stop back in November.
Do you think from this point moving forward that I'm going to be trusting that this is an honest person? No. I won't ever.
He shows me documents from a court ruling in his case where the judge granted evidence gathered by Officer Stinson be suppressed on grounds he failed to establish reasonable belief during the traffic stop.
If they don't address this and he gets put back as an officer, it's just a huge, huge mistake on their part.
Mom! Help me!
The video shows it all, and Teresa says that's exactly the point.
He treats people with total disrespect. He uses excessive force. He immediately starts screaming and yelling. I just don't think he has what it takes to be a good officer.
In Cody, Wyoming, Andrea Lutz, MTN News.
Andrea has been reaching out to Cody Police Chief Chuck Baker with multiple requests for an interview. He responded with previous written statements where he again asked the community to understand that video seen online doesn't tell the whole story. Wyoming state law doesn't allow the release of police officers' disciplinary records, so it's uncertain if Officer Stinson has been placed on leave before. Back in Montana, a wild high-speed chase in Carbon County. A man was fleeing law enforcement on Highway 212 because he had a $250,000 warrant out for his arrest, wanted for aggravated kidnapping. A deputy tried to pull the suspect over around 6 o'clock last night near Boyd, but he took off, reaching 100 miles per hour. At one point, he was being chased by 5 law enforcement vehicles. Eventually, a deputy struck the suspect's pickup, forcing it to overturn on the side of the road. No one was injured, but the Carbon County Sheriff says the suspect was likely headed to the hospital, then jail. New this morning, more people having strokes than ever before are coming through the doors at St. Vincent Healthcare in Billings. As Q2's Haley Monaco shows us, a life-saving team is helping many recover by treating them as quickly as possible.
When it comes to strokes, time lost is brain lost. For every minute a stroke goes untreated, 1.9 million brain cells are lost. That's why the nurses trained to quickly assess patients coming into this hospital are so important.
These are the stroke team nurses, the ones immediately paged when there's a stroke activation at St. Vincent Healthcare.
From the time that pager goes off
I need to act as quickly as I can to make sure that this patient has the best outcome.
And those pagers for these specially trained nurses have been going off more in the last few years. In 2022, it happened 280 times.
During a week, we probably have an average of 1 to 2 a day.
There are a number of reasons the hospital has seen a big spike in stroke patients over the last few years. First, the hospital can now perform a procedure to physically remove the clot.
Before, when we could not do thrombectomy, it was 4 hours, we can treat or not.
The second reason, COVID-19.
COVID is a disease that affects the clotting factors of our blood, so it can cause clots, and clots lead to strokes. About a year after you have COVID, you're at higher risk for stroke, no matter what age you are.
According to one study in the Journal of American Medical Association, the risk of stroke is more than twice as high for those who have experienced COVID-19. And these nurses on the neurological care floor at St. V's have seen higher and higher rates of strokes in younger and younger people since the pandemic.
We're seeing 70-year-olds, 60-year-olds, even down to 40 and 50-year-olds coming in with pretty devastating strokes.
The nurses are trained to react quickly and know what to do when a possible stroke patient comes in. But they also want you to know what signs to look for: face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty, and to not wait to come in.
For stroke education, we like to teach the public, be fast.
The longer that you wait with these symptoms, the more brain dies, the more deficits you have, the more disabled you may become.
In Billings, Haley Monaco, MTN News.
Montana nursing homes continue struggling to keep the lights on. During the last legislative session, state lawmakers passed a bill to provide them with more funding. However, Governor Greg Gianforte just vetoed it. The bill would have given facilities more money by increasing Medicaid reimbursement rates, but the governor called the legislation fiscally unsound and said it undermined Montana's ability to age in their homes outside of an institution. The author of the bill is now trying to rally support to override the veto.
They were afraid that it was going to be another program that was going to get out of control, and I understand that, but we have so many people in support of it. I thought this was a wonderful way to let this segment of our population know that we do care, we do hear them. If this doesn't get fixed now, it's not fixed, and we need to get it addressed.
At least 12 nursing homes closed in Montana in 2022 due to a lack of funding and staffing shortages. Billings is getting an infusion of $1 million to clean up and redevelop so-called brownfield sites. Brownfields are properties that have potential environmental contamination. The money to transform these spots comes from a federal infrastructure bill and was loaned to the city by the state. To qualify, Big Sky Economic Development had to provide the EPA with commercial properties for sale that are possible brownfields, including 2 well-known buildings downtown.
We know that City Hall is going out to look for proposals on how to redevelop City Hall. As well, the Billings Gazette building is for sale.
The money exists in 2 pots, $500,000 to do the actual assessment of the property and the rest in low-interest loans to help buyers or sellers clean and repair a brownfield property.